Hello everyone, welcome to the fourth branch program, The Place for Common Sense. I'm glad you're here. I hope you had a good night. If not, take heart. It will be better next time. If you're already having a good day, fantastic. It's always good to start the day in a good note. Because sometimes you wake up, you feel that you don't even want to get out of bed. Millions of thoughts go through your mind and you think, what the hell? What are we doing all this for? What is the end goal? Where are we heading to? What contribution do we bring to the whole affair of our society, to the grand scheme of things? My father and I used to talk a lot about having those philosophical discussions and trying to understand what is this all for? Because deep down, if you try to bring it to a more cosmic level and try to really figure out what we're doing, it's maybe either a useless exercise or may even puzzle you some more. You were born, you grew up to become an adult, you have kids, of course, and you get older, you die. So in the process of that, the birth and the death, what exactly happened that you did that you could say that it was something you understand, something worthwhile, although you may not necessarily think of that when you wake up in the morning, still laying in bed trying to decide what the hell. Millions of thoughts go through your mind, and sometimes you feel a heavy burden on your shoulder. You don't even know why, because it's not anything that's going on in your life in general that's caused that. You just feel that heavy burden. I feel all the time that way, especially whenever I think that my morning start the way it starts, by trying to make some contribution to society in order to better society. And I suspect the main problem could be you're looking at the other aspect of it, that you're doing all that, and there is another group that doing just the opposite to destroy everything that, well, you genuinely believe would better society, but there is another group that wants to do just the opposite. Sometimes it's out of ignorance, but other times it's deliberately. There is a topic that we're currently exploring to show why despite the fact we've been saying the United States is the greatest country in the world, and why in fact it's probably just a propaganda, but we can be the greatest country in the world. Of course, we say that because I suspect we have all the weapons in the world, maybe, or because we attract many different people from different parts of the world to come here for the American dream. Whatever the case is, and I demonstrated that before in a previous documentary, but we will tackle this same topic using a different angle. We've been seeing a fight between Democrats and Republicans. It's almost like watching the country in a seesaw type of movement. You know, when you were a kid, I don't know if you used to play that. A kid sit on one side of the seesaw and the other one on its extreme, and then keep bouncing each other up and down, up and down, up and down. And that's pretty much what the United States has been going through. And I will show you the reason is very simple, not because we don't know what to do, but because we, the constituent, choose to accept the premise that's laid out by politicians, and that makes it such that instead of fighting for the same thing, which usually constituents pretty much want the same thing except for a few small differences, and we'll show that to you as well. But politicians amplify our differences because it benefits them. If you look at what's going on today in Washington, well, I say today, but it has been going on for decades now. Politicians don't want to do anything which benefit us. The idea that they do this for you, of course you buy it. That's the reason you go to the poll and you think so and so is a great individual. I voted for him because he's doing this, that, and the other. Unfortunately, we don't have, most of the time, we don't have the time to gauge, to even be involved in political discourse, and we rely on other mediums such as news, journalists, to bring us the actual information so that we can make decisions. And yet, here again, we have another problem because the information is brought to us based on, well, whatever they feel. Now, if you watch Fox, you pretty much don't get information. You get another government network which amplifies, especially, it's been like that for a while, but under the Trump administration, it's been pretty much a mouthpiece that amplifies Trump message. As such, when we talk about the big divide, we cause the big divide. But it is something that we will talk about this morning. This is segment 1 of our program. This is the 4th French program, The Place for Common Sense. And my name is Mike Duchesne. I always identify myself as MD, but that's what it stands for. And the hope with the 4th French program is to bring some sanity in the conversation. Use a common sense approach. Now, before you go and say everybody has common sense, so you think, so you would hope. But throughout history in general, it is already proven that it's not so. In fact, I believe one famous writer even put it this way, paraphrasing here, that common sense is so rare, it should be considered a superpower. If you take our political situation today, you'll find out that people who voted Donald Trump in office believe that they have the greatest common sense in the world. And the legislators that Republicans voted to represent them are doing all the wrong things, detrimental to the nation, actually eroding our constitution and our rule of law. They believe they're doing the best thing for the country. So it is with common sense. Everybody sits in whatever world they created, and through the prism of that world, they say, this makes more sense than that. Now, we begin this by asking the question, by actually making a statement. The Mueller report is probably one of the most important documents in the history of of our country. The Mueller report was not created because someone decided, oh, let's create a report about a president. That's not something that happened on a regular basis. It is an extraordinary document. It is a document that was created because something bad happened to our nation. Something terrible happened to our nation. Now, someone mentioned that the US has also gotten involved in other countries' business, which is true. We have gotten involved in a lot of other country business. In fact, the history of the United States getting involved in other countries' business, it's written, it's documented, is historical. Now, it started with this, especially after the Cold War, after World War II, then there have been a race between United States and the Soviet Union, and the race had to do with each superpower trying to rally behind its cause as many countries as possible. Russia, the Soviet Union, communism, United States, capitalism. So each side is trying to claim that what they have, what it has, is better than the other side. Pretty much that's a race to having the world divided and to go to become communist and the other side to become capitalist. Now, as someone who has studied both, it's sometimes humorous, sometimes it's sad, because the people are always the one caught in the middle in the fight. That's always the case, whether it's global level or at domestic level. That's always the case. The people are always caught in the middle. So in our analysis of what's been going on here in the United States, we come to the conclusion that yes, the politicians are pulling the string, but we the people are very well responsible for the problem. And we're hoping that in the next few days, weeks, months, or even years, we can manage through this program to open the eyes, not to tell you, not so that you can do things our way, but rather so that information, because as we mentioned many times in this program, we're not associated with any political party, and we don't wish to at any point in time, because the whole point is to not be associated with political party, but to be able to do this job so that we do it without any pressure from political party, without any pressure from any group, whether it's political, financial, because the idea is to be able to perfect the union so that we can leave a better country for future generations. But we already know that it is a stiff, very steep climb. When we began this program, we deliberately used George Washington as our foundation, but more specifically using one of his principles. It's far better to be alone than to be in bad companies. It is far better to be alone than to be in bad company, George Washington said. So the Mueller report was created because something bad happened to our nation, a foreign government get involved in our system of government. It wasn't just for the sake of getting involved. It wasn't just for the sake of supporting a particular candidate, but the action itself was more nefarious than that. It was to categorically destroy our system of democracy, our system of election. Now, this is not anything new that Russia has done. Russia has been at it for the longest. But unfortunately, that time, Russia found a willing participant to help destroy the United States of America. Now, something like that, proven through evidence, documents, testimonies, should be a very unifying conclusion for everyone in the nation to say, you know what? Politics cannot trump patriotism. We ought to defend our nation first. But as you witnesses, that's not what's happening. You have a number of Republican legislators, congressmen, senators, people like Jim Jordan, Mark Meadows, Devin Nunes in the House, and you have Lindsey Graham in the Senate, Mitch McConnell. They all doing one thing and one thing alone: to help destroy our democracy. And they're not doing it because they don't know better. They're doing it deliberately. The Mueller report, volume 1, which is what we're currently still reading, detail not a document created by some angry individual, but someone who is a patriot, who saw above politics, who put on hold his private life, his personal life, who even abandoned millions of dollars in salary to serve the country. We're talking about Robert Mueller, because he is that interested in the well-being of our country. He put his life on hold. He never aspired to become president. He wasn't running to become president. He didn't have any aspiration for that. But as a patriot, he knew that was his duty to defend our country from an enemy, Russia. So he put his life on hold. Today, after the report has been released, it gives us a clear picture of the Republican Party, a party that doesn't care about the country, a party that claims to have patriots. Maybe the understanding of what patriotism is has been lost. And as I mentioned before, patriotism is not equivalent to citizenship. You were born American, but you weren't born a patriot. So not only they got the job done for themselves, for them, referring to the legislators, to see exactly what our fiercest enemy, our number one enemy, has done to our nation. They have the proof. They have the document. They can see for themselves. It's not someone who just writing his personal opinion. He gave proof of all those bad things that Russia has done to our nation. And yet you have people, legislators, Republican legislators, whose job is to protect the nation, whose job is to uphold the Constitution of the United States. Those are the individuals who are not just not taking that seriously, but they're also getting in a campaign of smearing a patriot, an individual who put his life on hold to serve the country. This is what Republican legislators are doing today, and they representing people. And they have all kind of rationale as to why they turn against the United States of America, why they working against the very Constitution of the United States, why they working to erode our democracy. They have all kind of rationale for that. And one such rationale is the investigation was spearheaded on the wrong premise. That's the biggest, the bombshell rationale as to why that investigation should be squashed. Because it was done on the wrong premise. Now, yesterday I explained to you what that rationale is, whether it is even an 8th grader, an average 8th grader, we're not talking about genius here, would be able to see that logic is warped. Even an 8th grader would not come with such stupid logic. Is in a sense what the Republican legislators are saying. Law enforcement was called in to investigate a problem in a house in a neighborhood. On wrong premises. The 911 call simply suggests that there is a lot of noise in the house next door. Not because there is any, that's why I said wrong premise, but because the neighbor hates his or her neighbor next door. So he's been harassing that neighbor in every way that he can. So let's call neighbor who made the 911 call neighbor A, and the neighbor that's being harassed neighbor B. So neighbor A place a 911 call and say there is a lot of noise at neighbors B. So of course our system here, they will send a dispatch, police, law enforcement, to investigate the matter. Remember, there is no noise. So that's the Republican argument, the premise for the Republican argument why the investigation, no matter what it reveals, should be squashed. That's their argument, and it is mind-boggling even for someone who may not have had any college education, but that's their argument. That the neighbor A called 911 for noise on neighbor B. There is no noise, but police have to investigate. So in other words, I'm giving the Republican the benefit of the doubt that yes, there was no reason to investigate. By the way, there were plenty, but I'm using their argument to make a very important point. So the argument is neighbor A called the police on neighbor B because neighbor A reports neighbor B is making a lot of noise next door. So law enforcement was dispatched to investigate. So when law enforcement got there, of course there was no noise, but maybe the neighbor B could have turned down the noise, whatever the noise was. But it's law enforcement job to make certain that once they turn their back, then it doesn't, the problem doesn't continue. So the police knock at neighbor B door, and neighbor B get in the door, and why one of the police officer just peeking inside and saw something that the police officer thinks it's a crime in progress. Whatever that crime was, maybe drug being packaged, a pile of weapon on the floor, whatever the case, or a pile of money on the floor. So the police officer, of course, has to do what law enforcement has to do. Ask the neighbor B to open the door and step aside. Police officer got in and saw all that happening. Drug being packaged in one side, pile of weapon on another side, pile of money. So of course it's crime ongoing. So police officer arrested neighbor B and charged neighbor B with all those money laundering, drugs, weapon, illegal weapon, and so on and so forth. Now the Republicans' argument is this: when the dispatch was made, it was to investigate noise. So because the police officer did not hear any noise, so the police officer should have just turned around and walk away. But Republicans got it even worse than what I just mentioned. They even took the police officer to the door to witness that there are crimes ongoing, but their argument is police officer should have just walked away because there was no noise. So the police officer arrested neighbor B on false premise. That's the Republican argument, because neighbor A called on neighbor B because neighbor A reported there was noise. There was no noise. That's what Republicans call false premise. But the police officer found crime going on, and Republicans' argument is the police officer should not or could not have arrested neighbor B because it was on false premise. So it goes with the Mueller report. We're going to give the Republican a benefit of the doubt. It was on false premise. But tons of crimes have been discovered. So Republicans saying, no, all those things should be squashed because it was on false premise. And that's your Republican legislator giving you reason for you to say, yeah, it was false premise. And that's what we have today in Washington. That's why you see Republican legislators are fighting against their counterpart, their Democrat counterpart, instead of doing the job for which they were elected, which is to exercise oversight on the executive branch. That's the argument. It was on false premise. It doesn't matter how many crimes that they found, they should just leave it alone. That's what legislators in Washington, Republican legislators, have become. They are no patriot. Because one would think that someone who is a patriot, let's say we can argue all we want about the premise under which the investigation started. We can argue all we want about it. But we found that Russia was very much deep in our election, collaborated, at least according to the report, at least 100 people, 17 of those people were very close to Trump. 100 people from Russia or with Russian connection were part of the Trump campaign. That never happened in the history of the United States. 117 of whom were very closely related to the campaign. Let's look at the first aspect of the problem, that Russia did indeed influence our election. Why don't we start there? If you are a patriot, wouldn't it be your job at that point? I'm talking to the Republican legislature to actually hold the individual who currently sit in the Oval Office responsible for having made it possible. That's number one. Now that's the first argument the Republicans are advancing, that it was on the wrong premise. It doesn't matter what the investigation revealed, should be squashed. Now there is a second argument being floated around as a defense, but that mostly so far I've been hearing from my fellow Republicans. I don't know if it's already climbed the ladder all the way to the legislators in Washington, but so far it's within the Republican constituent. They said Democrats would have accepted that too if they had the opportunity. And I mentioned yesterday, and I'll mention it again, no Democrat would not have accepted help from a foreign government. In fact, Democrat would not have accepted help, period. And I have a couple of examples for you. One more recent, but 3 times in the history of the United States, Russia, the Soviet Union, approached Democrats, candidate for president, to offer help. All 3 times they got rejected. So yes, we know Republicans. I know you have core values that nobody can seem to figure out what those are. But Democrats that you always blame liberal, this and that, they do have core value. They are patriots. 3 times Russia approached Democrats, candidate for president, just like Donald Trump was, to offer help. All 3 times they got rejected. Oh, I forgot to mention, all 3 times they were Democrats, in case you didn't get that the first time. So no Democrat would not have accepted help from Russia. And there was a 4th time. That time it was, well, not from Russia, at least not that we know of. It was a package sent to Al Gore in 2000 during the campaign, during the election, the 2000 election between Al Gore and George W. Bush. A package containing dirt about George W. Bush was sent to Al Gore. Well, he was an opportunity that it wasn't from Russia. He could have used it. You know what Al Gore campaign did? They took the package and forwarded it to FBI. Democrats, yes, Republicans. Democrats have core values that Republicans can only dream of. They are patriots, not by label, but by action. They don't just say they're patriot. They're not using a bullhorn to claim they are patriot, because they know this is what an American citizen is supposed to be. Republicans like to get on the bullhorn and claim all kind of label. Fiscally conservative, Christian conservative, patriot, they like to claim label and get on the bullhorn. But when it comes to action, they are as evil as the devil himself, because their actions speak louder than words. I'm sure you must know that. Three times, Democrat candidates for president were approached by Russia who offered help. And all three times, Democrats rejected the help. Can you say that about Republicans?
Live from New York City, at the top of the hour, every weekday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. The Fourth Branch presents discussions, debate, commentary on social, political issues, current events, sports, entertainment, religion, education, science, and every Saturday at 10:30 a.m. for a full presentation on controversial issues such as abortion, homosexuality, war on blacks. Are Republicans dumber than Democrats? Information which might irritate you, make you cry, make you laugh, but above all, will make you smarter. Join us every time. It is the right thing to do. It is the only way to keep your sanity in a world of chaos, hypocrisy, immorality, and deception. Welcome to Common Sense.
Welcome to segment 1, and this is the Mueller reading report, or the Mueller report reading of the Mueller report. Number 2, George Papadopoulos. George Papadopoulos was a foreign policy advisor to the Trump campaign from March 2016 to early October 2016. In late April 2016, Papadopoulos was told by London-based professor Joseph Mifsud, immediately after Mifsud returned from a trip to Moscow, that the Russian government had obtained dirt on candidate Clinton in the form of thousands of emails. 1 week later, on May 6, 2016, Papadopoulos suggested to a representative of a foreign government that the Trump campaign had received indication from the Russian government that it could assist the campaign through the anonymous release of information that would be damaging to candidate Clinton. Papadopoulos shared information about Russian dirt with people outside of the campaign, and the office investigated whether he also provided it to a campaign official. Papadopoulos and the campaign official with whom he interacted told the office that they did not recall that Papadopoulos passed them the information. Throughout the relevant period of time and for several months thereafter, Papadopoulos worked with Mifsud and two Russian nationals to arrange a meeting between the campaign and the Russian government. That meeting never came to pass. Origins of campaign work. In March 2016, Papadopoulos became a foreign policy advisor to the Trump campaign. As early as the summer of 2015, he had sought a role as a policy advisor to the campaign, but in a September 30th, 2015 email, he was told that the campaign was not hiring policy advisors. In late 2015, Papadopoulos obtained a paid position on the campaign of Republican presidential candidate Ben Carson. Although Carson remained in the presidential race until March 2016, Papadopoulos had stopped actively working for his campaign by early February 2016. At that time, Papadopoulos reached out to a contact at the London Centre of International Law Practice, LCILP, which billed itself as a unique institution comprising high-level professional international law practitioners dedicated to the advancement of global legal knowledge and the practice of international law. Papadopoulos said that he had finished his role with the Carson's campaign and asked if LCILP was hiring. In early February, Papadopoulos agreed to join LCILP and arrived in London to begin work. As he was taking his position at LCILP, Papadopoulos contacted Trump campaign manager Corey Lewandowski via LinkedIn and emailed campaign official Michael Glassner about his interest in joining the Trump campaign. On March 2nd, 2016, Papadopoulos sent Glassner another message reiterating his interest. Glassner passed along word of Papadopoulos' interest to another campaign official, Joy Lutes, who notified Papadopoulos by email that she had been told by Glassner to introduce Papadopoulos to Sam Clovis, the Trump campaign's national co-chair and chief policy advisor. At the time of Papadopoulos' March 2nd email, the media was criticizing the Trump campaign for lack of experienced foreign policy or national security advisor within its ranks. To address that issue, senior campaign official asked Clovis to put a foreign policy team together on short notice. After receiving Papadopoulos' name from Lutes, Clovis performed a Google search on Papadopoulos, learned Papadopoulos' name from Lutes, learned that he had worked at the Hudson Institute, and believed that he had credibility on energy issues. On March 3rd, 2016, Clovis arranged to speak with Papadopoulos by phone to discuss Papadopoulos joining the campaign as a foreign policy advisor, and on March 6, 2016, the two spoke. Papadopoulos recalled that Russia was mentioned as a topic, and he understood from the conversation that Russia would be an important aspect of the campaign foreign policy. At the end of the conversation, Clovis offered Papadopoulos a role as a foreign policy advisor to the campaign, and Papadopoulos accepted the offer, of course. Initial Russia-related contacts. Approximately a week after signing on as a foreign policy advisor, Papadopoulos traveled to Rome, Italy, as part of his duties with LCILP. The purpose of the trip was to meet officials affiliated with Link Campus University, a for-profit institution based by a former Italian government official. During the visit, Papadopoulos was introduced to Joseph Messoud. Messoud is a Maltese national who worked as a professor at the London Academy of Diplomacy in London, England. Although Messoud worked out of London, he was also affiliated with LCILP, and the encounter in Rome was the first time that Papadopoulos met him. Messoud maintained various Russian contacts while living in London, as described further below. Among his contacts was, name redacted, a one-time employee of the IRA, the entity that carried out the Russian social media campaign. See Volume 1, Section 3, Supra. In January and February of 2016, Messoud and, name redacted, discussed, item redacted, possibly meeting in Russia. The investigation did not identify evidence of them meeting. Later in the spring of 2016, name redacted, was also in contact, name redacted, that was linked to an employee of the Russian Ministry of Defense. And that account had overlapping contact with a group of Russian military-controlled Facebook accounts that included accounts used to promote WikiLeaks releases in the course of the GRU's hack and release operation. See Volume 1, Section 3.B.1 Supra. According to Papadopoulos, Messoud at first seemed uninterested in Papadopoulos when they met in Rome. After Papadopoulos informed Messoud about his role in the Trump campaign, however, Messoud appeared to take greater interest in Papadopoulos. The two discussed Messoud's European and Russian contact and had a general discussion about Russia. Messoud also offered to introduce Papadopoulos to European leaders and others with contact to the Russian government. Papadopoulos told the office that Messoud's claim of substantial connection with Russian government officials interested Papadopoulos, who thought that such connection could increase his importance as a policy advisor to the Trump campaign. On March 17, 2016, Papadopoulos returned to London. 4 days later, candidate Trump publicly named him as a member of the Foreign Policy and National Security Advisory Team chaired by Senator Jeff Sessions, describing Papadopoulos as an oil and energy consultant and an excellent guide. On March 24, 2016, Papadopoulos met with Messoud in London. Messoud was accompanied by a Russian female named Olga Polonskaya. Messoud introduced Polonskaya as a former student of his who had connection to Vladimir Putin. Papadopoulos understood at the time that Polonskaya may have been Putin's niece, but later learned that this was not true. During the meeting, Polonskaya offered to help Papadopoulos to establish contact in Russia and stated that the Russian ambassador in London was a friend of hers. Based on this interaction, Papadopoulos expected Missoud and Polonskaya to introduce him to the Russian ambassador in London, but that did not occur. Following his meeting with Missoud, Papadopoulos sent an email to members of the Trump campaign Foreign Policy Advisory Team. The subject of the message was "Meeting with Russian Leadership including Putin." The message stated in pertinent part, quote, "I just finished a very productive lunch with a good friend of mine, Joseph Missoud, the director of the London Academy of Diplomacy, who introduced me to both Putin Nitz and the Russian ambassador in London, who also acts as the deputy foreign minister. The topic of the lunch was to arrange a meeting between us and the Russian leadership to discuss U.S.-Russia ties under President Trump. They are keen to host us in a neutral city or directly in Moscow. They said the leadership, including Putin, is ready to meet with us and Mr. Trump should be their interest. Waiting for everyone's thought on moving forward with this very important issue." Papadopoulos' message came at a time when Clovis perceived a shift in the campaign's approach toward Russia, from one of engaging with Russia through NATO framework and taking a strong stance on Russian aggression in Ukraine. The remaining part of this paragraph has been redacted as grand jury. Clovis' response to Papadopoulos, however, did not reflect that shift. Replying to Papadopoulos and the other members of the Foreign Policy Advisory Team copied on the initial email, Clovis wrote, "This is most informative. Let me work it through the campaign. No commitment until we see how this plays out. My thought is that we probably should not go forward with any meeting with the Russians until we have had occasion to sit with our NATO allies, especially France, Germany, and Great Britain. We need to reassure our allies that we are not going to advance anything with Russia until we have everyone on the same page." More thoughts later today. Great work. That concludes our reading of the Mueller report for the day. We will come back in a couple of hours in order to continue conversation about how to better our society. I am Mike Duchesne, MD for short. I hope you have a wonderful day. Hopefully, we can be together once again in a couple of hours for discussion of other matters that impact our lives and how to go about solving the problem we encounter together. That was an update through the prism of common sense. Join us again at the top of the hour. I am MD.
host of the Fourth Branch program, the place for common sense. Send us comments, criticism, suggestion, or simply let us know how we're doing. Thank you for watching. See you in just a bit. The Fourth Branch podcast is brought to you in collaboration with the People Branch publication, which can be found on the People Branch website located at peoplebranch.org. That's peoplebranch.org. That's peoplebranch.org website, in which you will find a number of very interesting articles. My name is Mike Duchesne, MD for short. I hope you have a great afternoon or a great evening, whichever it happens to be. Hopefully you can join me again next time for another interesting episode of this podcast. That was the Fourth Branch, live from New York. Good day.
My God be my provider, He be my protector. So far they go higher. Yo baby, I need Pabeka. My God be my provider, He be my protector. So far they go higher. Oh yeah, me nyawo biampo boni. I don't do them anything. People say me another day. If you wish me well, I wish you well. Me nyawo biampo boni. I don't do them anything. People say me another day. If you wish me well, I wish you well. Eva, Eva, I still dey fight for the paper. Love me now, no be later. No be later. Eva, Eva, I still dey fight for the paper. Love me now, no be later. Yeah. Nana nyami kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama. Nana nyami be kebi mama, kebi mama. Nana nyami kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama. Nana nyami be kebi mama. Me nyawo biampo boni. I don't do them anything. People say me another day. If you wish me well, I wish you well. Me nyawo biampo boni. I don't do them anything. People say me another day. If you wish me well, I wish you well.
You munyai, but you make it come and host them. I see by record with a stolen mic. We see my phone coming here, can see na two main pie. We banya machine and we destroy the soul inside. My baby, I'm on a monkai.
Shame on you, I pray my God go favor you. What we they do be deja vu. Omunya and kefie dedu. Shame on you, I pray my God go favor you. What we they do be deja vu. Omunya and kefie dedu. Nana nyami kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama. Nana nyami be kebi mama, kebi mama. Nana nyami kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama. Nana nyami be kebi mama. Me nyawo biampo boni. I don't do them anything. People say me another day. If you wish me well, I wish you well. Me nyawo biampo boni. I don't do them anything. People say me another day. If you wish me well, I wish you well. Eva, Eva, I still dey fight for the paper. Love me now, no be later. No eba. We dey fight for the paper. Love me now, no be later. Yeah.